Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to our panel, our first panel this morning. My name is Elizabeth Roberex. I'm a principal investment officer with IDB Invest. IDB Invest, of course, is the arm of the IDB group that's working with private sector clients, mobilizing private capital for projects. I work in the infrastructure and energy group of IDB Invest, where we look at projects in the water and sanitation, transportation, energy, health, and education spaces all through the region. And we're talking this morning about sustainable development, and we're very pleased to be doing that this morning. The topic is particularly, I think, relevant as we've all been experiencing during these times of the pandemic. We've seen a real decline in investment in our region, decline in tourism, a decline in innovation, and really decline in investment in infrastructure. Many of the countries are really focused on the emergency crisis of the pandemic, keeping people healthy, trying to bring those services, and so we have seen a real slowdown in the development of infrastructure projects. We're starting to see a little bit of movement again, and we certainly hope that on the horizon we can see this potential for recovery and innovation and investment and opportunity. And so that's the role of IDB Invest, is to try to support that, make it happen, bring all of our resources to bear to work with our clients to allow that to happen as a partner with our clients. And really, as this recovery is taking place and we're all working in a different way, and we see different sectors being more relevant than others at the moment, we see amazing opportunities that I think a lot of our clients see as well, and risks as well in terms of the changes that we've seen and in the way that business is being done. So we wanted to put the panel together today to discuss the role of the private sector in reinvigorating investment in infrastructure in the region, and in particular sustainable infrastructure, because I think we've learned in the past 18 months that nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, and we need to be ready to manage a lot of different types of situations. And so we're really pleased to have the panel of guests that we have today. These are companies that have been pioneers in the investment in infrastructure, all types of infrastructure in our region. Particularly in this case, we're focusing on energy infrastructure this morning. And we want to talk to them about what it means to them, the concept of sustainable infrastructure, how this applies to their companies and the projects that they've worked on, how they think about it, and also the challenges that they've faced to get to where they are today, as well as the challenges that they see looking forward as we move through the recovery. But first, we wanted to start with my colleague, Gianfranco Carasale. Gianfranco is the head of the Infrastructure and Energy Division of IDB Invest, and has worked with many clients on large and small infrastructure projects, all kinds throughout the region. And Gianfranco, we wanted to hear from you. What's the main message from IDB Invest's point of view in terms of how we want to help our clients develop sustainable infrastructure projects at this time?
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you everybody, all the listeners that are online today. I think the main message that we want to convey is we want to convey through our clients, and I like always to say that let our clients speak with us or for us. And what you will see in common about the panel that we put together today is innovation and how certain companies in the sector, in the energy space particularly, are pushing relentlessly the agenda of climate change and taking risks that are key in order to address the effects of reducing carbon emissions and address the effects of climate change in the region. You will hear from Bernardita at ENGIE. It's a client that we work with. ENGIE embraced a strong decarbonization strategy as part of the commitment to Paris, part of the commitment with Paris. And we supported ENGIE in the early decommissioning of a coal-fired plant and replacement that coal-fired energy with a wind power project in Chile. By monetizing the the carbon reductions of the early retirement of this coal power plant in Chile. And that was a pilot project that was the first of the kind in the region, and one of the first, or probably the only one in all over the world. And it shows the commitment of NG in embracing this strategy. You will hear also from Andy. Andy made an investment in Haiti. As you know, the situation in Haiti is extremely fragile. 30% of the population have access to electricity. If you have access, it's never 24/7, which forces you to have your own small generation set run by diesel. And Andy had a wild idea, which was to create a private microgrid in the northwest part of Haiti to serve 60,000 people with electricity 24/7. And in doing so, with a combination of renewable energy, battery storage, and fossil fuels at the same time. But it showed with a strong, relentless effort in making something happen and innovating in the application of financial structures, how a solution can be delivered to address the needs of Haiti, the needs of the people of Haiti. And finally, we will have also on the panel Michael Shea. Michael is a client, a long-established client of us, belongs to the Atlas Group. Atlas is a pioneer and one of the leaders in investment in renewable sector in the region, particularly solar. You will usually see Carlos Barrera is talking in conference. He likes to participate. He always participating in trying to push the agenda there. But Michael is in Atlas, the guru behind the structured finance, and the person like nerds in structured finance like us like to talk about, because with him we implemented financing for the New Juazeiro and Casablanca solar power projects in Brazil, which were the first greenfield power project financed by international banks that had a private PPA in US dollars in Brazil, which required a lot of effort from our side in order to feel comfortable with the regulatory environment. But in addition to that, Atlas went ahead and installed the first time in Latin America 100% of that installation is bifacial technology for the solar module, will increase the efficiency of the solar panels, and we were able to finance the marginal increase in generation through our with our blended finance team. Overall, I think what it shows is basically I like to think that we are pretty much like the clients that we are talking today. Innovative, a relentless effort to push the agenda in climate change, a strong willing to operate all across the region from different sides of transaction. The transaction in Haiti with Sigora Utility required the support from us from less than $10 million. And at the same time, in Chile, we supported NG with a transaction more than $150 million, along with $150 million. And it shows as well our strong commitment established back in the 90s when we decided to finance the first hydroelectric power project in Brazil, privately owned, a first of a kind at that time in the way of privatizations and the way of the participation of a private sector in the infrastructure sector. We continue through all this process supporting renewable energy, wind and solar, mainstreaming the technology and helping countries to change the energy matrix. And we are preparing ourselves to do the same with hydrogen and green hydrogen all over the region and becoming also the leaders in support of this new technology. So it defines us innovation, pushing the financial instrument that we have in the bank to support clients that share our same values and are willing to support that agenda. So I thank you very much, and thank you, Elizabeth, and good luck with the panel.
Thank you, Gianfranco. Thank you very much for those words. So let's get right to our panel. We are really, really pleased to have these three people with us today, these three clients of IDB Invest. First of all, I'd like to welcome Bernardita Infante, coming to us from Santiago, Chile. Bernardita is the head of corporate finance at ENGIE Energía Chile, where she is responsible for managing the financing, treasury, and investor relations functions. She joined ENGIE Energía Chile in 2009, following a 26-year banking career in the Chilean offices of a number of international banks. Thank you, Bernardita, for being with us today. And you have the nice blend of banking experience as well as developer experience. So I'm sure you'll add a lot to the panel. We also have with us today Andy Bindea. Thank you, Andy, for being here this morning. Andy's coming from the Dominican Republic. I think you just got there recently. Andy has dedicated his career to environmental and social causes. He spent 5 years as a Greenpeace campaign coordinator in Central and Eastern Europe, where he ran clean water, ethical mining, and renewable energy campaigns. And he then came to the US and developed a residential solar company in Virginia called Segura Solar, which has grown exponentially and become one of the fastest growing solar companies in the US. And then using the success of that company as a platform, he has been taking on the challenge of investing in Haiti and bringing energy to remote communities in the northwest of Haiti, which don't have otherwise any access to energy. And Andy founded and financed Segura Haiti for that purpose and developed the country's first private utility, providing clean, reliable, and fairly priced electricity to Haitians. Thank you for being here, Andy. And finally, we are very pleased to welcome Michael Shea, who is the head of structured finance for Atlas Renewable Energy. Atlas is a full-service developer, investor, builder, and operator of renewable energy projects all over Latin America. We've worked with them a number of times, as Gianfranco mentioned. Before joining Atlas, Michael worked at Sanetis in Brazil, holding the position of head of equity and debt finance for LATAM. And prior to that, he was an executive director at Goldman Sachs Structured and Principal Finance team, as well as a director within Deutsche Bank's Credit Opportunity team. So we have a very nice blend of panelists, and we thank you again for being with us. So just as some background in terms of why this subject is so relevant for IDB Invest, at our annual meeting in March, our president, Mauricio Claver-Caron, outlined the Vision 2025 for the bank, which is the bank group, to support the region, which basically created a roadmap to achieve recovery from the pandemic, as well as a sustainable growth after following the impact of the pandemic, which has been devastating. And there are 5 opportunities where we're focusing in that context, including regional integration and strengthening value chains, support for small and medium-sized firms to narrow the estimated $1 trillion financing gap for infrastructure as well as other projects, promotion of a digital economy, gender and inclusion, and climate action. So we're looking at the sustainable growth of our region through those lenses, basically. And you know, what we really are trying to do is play a role partnering with our clients to help them build these projects and this moment move toward the recovery in the region. So what I'd like to do is basically just ask you a few questions, and I generate an exchange. If you have other questions you want to raise that I haven't raised, please mention them to me, and keep it sort of informal. So first of all, I'd like to start with hearing a little bit from you about your organizations and what the concept of sustainable infrastructure means to you. Is it something that you really do you talk about? Is it sort of like a buzzword that doesn't have a lot of meaning to you? Because we do hear that a lot, sustainable infrastructure. But what do you have specific goals associated with that? How do you apply it to your projects? If you could give us a little bit of background, each of you, that would be great as a way to start the panel. Maybe we start with Bernardita, por favor.
Yes. Well, good morning, Elizabeth and everyone. ENGIE Energía Chile, the company I work for, is part of ENGIE, a French group, which defines itself as a global reference in low carbon energy and services. And this is not just a nice sentence, but for example, in the words of our CEO, it's at the heart of ENGIE's purpose, and it's a societal and business responsibility. So ENGIE recently announced its commitment to net zero by 2045 across all scopes. And this translates into a very concrete roadmap. Some of the actions include full coal exit, reducing the carbon intensity of our power generation, reducing the emission linked to the use of sold product, investing only in projects compatible with these goals, of course, assigning a carbon budget to each of the group's global business lines, and incentivizing our top management on carbon objectives. So these are very concrete measures to achieve this roadmap.
Thank you, Bernardita. That's very interesting. We'd love to hear more about that later in the panel. Andy, can you tell us a little bit about Segura Haiti and how you see sustainable development? I guess in the context of Haiti, it may be a little different.
Absolutely, Elizabeth, and thank you so much for having us and the opportunity to showcase our team's project in Haiti. For us, sustainability means, first and foremost, as it pertains to electrification, as a utility electrification, is the project able to stand the test of time? And as it pertains to a business, why is this important? Because if it cannot stand the test of time, we cannot finance it with private money. We have to be able to provide a return on equity, and then, as it pertains to you and IDB Invest, to provide the return on debt as it's agreed in our financing documents. So for us, sustainability means that the project must stay alive for the entire duration of a concession, 20 to 50 years, and it must get to the point that it can service its debt and provide a risk-appropriate return on equity. This is the major element of sustainability. When, as it pertains to the sources of electricity and so on and so forth, for us, sustainability means clean, reliable, fairly priced electricity. Environmental sustainability means 90% plus renewable energy and nothing less. Thank you.
And just as a little background, Segura Haiti is providing generation, transmission, and distribution services. All of that, sort of functioning as a utility in Haiti, and so facing different challenges because of that. Michael, please, can we hear from you how you see this from Atlas's side, where you're working on some really huge projects throughout the region? How do you see this issue of sustainability?
Sure. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone today, and I'm enjoying as well learning about the work of our colleagues here. So Atlas, we look towards, if you will, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as a framework that helps inspire the actual focus of our activities. I would say our core Sustainable Development Goals are enhancing the availability of renewable power across the Americas and reducing carbon emissions, essentially. And then we come to our material Sustainable Development Goals, and that's where we really we have a more personal touch, if you will. We have a strong focus on diversity, on reducing inequalities, and creating economic opportunities in all of the communities that we touch. So we have educational programs, we have gender equality programs, we have programs focused on improving the quality of life for the folks that work at our projects and that live in the environment of our projects.
Thank you, Michael. Very interesting. The different challenges that are faced by our panelists. So, Bernardita, this issue of climate change and decarbonization, where I think ENGIE has played such a leadership role, it's becoming urgent. The urgency, I think, is something that we're seeing more and more of, at least, at the IDB Invest, where this is really landing with us, how critical this is. And the recent International Energy Agency report stressed that, there shouldn't be any new fossil fuel projects being built going forward if we want to reach the Paris target. So, you talked a little bit about how NG is working on this, and you have a massive portfolio, obviously, of projects throughout the world. But what is the role that you think a large company developer like NG can play? And I'd love to hear more about the assignment of a carbon budget, as you mentioned, to each one of the units, and how that works, and the specific incentives that managers have, or decision makers have within NG to try to achieve their carbon objectives.
Sorry, there's a background noise. Okay, thank you. Well, effectively, that is probably not my specialty within the company. I mean, but we have a new CEO in the group globally, and she is specifically sponsoring all of these measures, like having a budget to comply with the transformation path, and not only a budget but also specific goals. The group is being divided into 4 business lines, including, for example, the thermal business line, the renewables, the networks, and services. And so each one of them will have to go through that through those goals with specific objectives. For example, the thermal division, of course, has to close lots of coal plants, specifically in Chile, which is my area of knowledge, really. And we have, for example, we have already closed 6 coal, or will be closing by year end 2025. We committed the full exit from coal, and we will be disconnecting by the end of 2025. We will have disconnected 6 coal units with total capacity of 0.8 gigawatt. And then we will be converting 0.7 gigawatt of our newer coal fleet to gas and biomass by the end of 2025. At the same time, we will be investing in 2 gigawatts of renewable projects to replace the coal units. So this is very, very challenging, at the same time, closing coal-fired plants at the same time that you build renewables. And the renewable projects have all these challenges that you have to, they are relatively smaller in scale as compared to the old thermal plants. But they require several projects in different locations, geographic locations. And what we've seen in the pandemic, for example, is issues related to the lack of supply of equipment parts, logistic issues, and contractors, for example, facing financial stress. But anyway, we view this as temporary, and the green economy, the becoming green, will continue leading the overall economic recovery during and after the COVID pandemic.
Thank you, Bernardita. Actually, I was in Chile for 3 years, sort of at the start of the solar boom, and it was quite remarkable, the amount of interest and investment in renewables in Chile. And it's great to see how it's evolved over time, and particularly, the innovative structures for incentivizing decarbonization that you are trying to do within the group. I mean, 2 gigawatts is obviously a lot. And we've seen the same thing, as you mentioned, in terms of struggle with some of our clients and utilities, in terms of getting equipment, just struggling with getting things and cash coming in and customers paying. And so we've done a couple of sort of pandemic recovery facilities to try to help with that. But it's been a real challenge. Andy, speaking of what you're working on and the challenges. Talking about Haiti, that's just one big challenge. I'd like to hear more about how because I know your project pretty well, but I'd like to hear more about how Segura Haiti approaches its, engagement with communities, in the sense that you are, you are building the energy generation, but you also have to engage directly with these individual residential customers. That you're really everywhere in the community. How have you done it? I mean, you've really, I think, created a lot of excitement within the region and support from the local communities. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So look, it's very important to note that first off, Haiti is very different than every other country in Central and Latin America. And we as a company are very different than a lot of other energy companies out there in the fact that we are a startup utility company, if you will. We've been providing services in Haiti in one of our grids since 2015, and in the other two since 2017 and 2018, respectively. It is a much smaller utility than an Angie. We are the Chihuahua to their Great Dane, if you will. But it is still a utility company. As such, it is a fully integrated utility company, as you mentioned before. We handle generation, we handle transmission, we handle distribution, and further to your point earlier about supply chains and so on and so forth. Because of the nature of the business environment and the difficulty of doing business in Haiti, we had to integrate the EPC portion of the well, it's not of the utility company. So it's fully integrated soup to nuts. So how do we engage with the community? Look, our business model is to provide a value for value exchange. We are not here to provide aid. We are a business. We sell electricity. What do we sell? We sell clean, reliable, fairly priced, productive electricity. What does this mean? Clean. Our target is 90+% clean energy that comes from renewables, because it doesn't make sense to bring in diesel on an island and burn it. So number two, reliable. It means 24/24 or 24/7, if you will. Our grid's uptime is 99.98%. Florida Light and Power is at 99.96%, so the Chihuahua got one. So this value for value exchange, the fact that people get to provide payment, a fairly priced payment for the electricity, we provide them value and we guarantee that value, provides an element of pride and inclusion that I mean, if you go to Mont Saint Nicolas, I invite you to visit, and anybody in the audience, if you ask for a cold beer, you ask for a Segura beer, because it has become the equivalent of coal. If you have electricity, you have a refrigerator, you have. So furthermore, what do? We hire local, we train local, we retain local. Again, we are a business, and as such, we want our ranks to come from the ranks of the people that we serve. Further, we provide a connection or the access to a connection to every single house and business. This is very, very important, particularly from a business standpoint. When you take a look at some of our micro-residential, we have 4 customer classes: micro-residential, micro-commercial, residential, commercial, and the 5th one, which is fairly rare, an industrial customer class. This goes from anything from 1 kilowatt hour per month, again, 1 kilowatt hour per month, all the way to 50,000 kilowatt hours per month. We provide electricity to clinics, schools, water pumping stations. How did we succeed in engaging the community? In a place like Haiti, there is no shortage of gaps in social services. Us as a utility, we feel that if we collect revenue from our customers, we have the responsibility for those customers' well-being. A happy customer is a well, I mean, if their socioeconomic development increases, the consumption increases. So there is a business case for that. However, again, going back to this element of micro and residential and micro commercial, I want to put a little bit of a nugget out there. This is very, very costly. This is very difficult to attain. If you have a customer that consumes, say they pay $10 a month in electricity, and it takes you 4 posts and the equipment, ease of mathematics, $1,200 to get to their house. Do the math, that's 10 years just for the capex. So this element of community involvement does cost real money. It must be taken seriously. And I believe it starts with hire local, train local, retain local.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, and it's also great, I think, how you have the local vendors selling prepaid minutes for Segura, Segura Energy. So it's really really tremendous to go and see the project and the impact it's had on the community. It's very, very direct impact and impressive, but very, very challenging. Michael, speaking of challenges, a question for you. Something that we've all been reading about recently, and we've been discussing a lot as a multilateral, as a bank that's financing a lot of solar projects and other renewable energy projects, is this issue of forced labor in the production of certain components for solar projects. And so I wanted to get an idea of, how Atlas sees this, and what you see as the impact it could have on the industry. Obviously, there's been so much talk about the reduction in prices of solar and how that's making more projects possible and things like that. And we, of course, want to make sure that it's being done in an ethical way. But, how do you see it affecting Atlas? How do you look at this, in terms of sourcing your panels? What impact will this have?
Sure. No, it's something that we take seriously. There's no degree of that. It's concerning, and it should be concerning for anyone who's involved in the industry in any facet. So what are we doing? We've actually hired a consultant, or I should say our shareholder, the fund manager, Actis, has hired a consultancy, which is called CEA. And I understand that it is also consulting the US government on potential traceability frameworks, so how they could actually institute, if you will, a review program, for source of materials, and the conditions under which those materials are produced, and be able to certify. So we are also working with CEA to understand the potential next steps, if you will, with traceability of materials. We have 6 core or key accounts, if you will, out of China for equipment. And once we have a clear understanding of a viable, practical manner for implementing traceability, we'll be discussing that as a client with our suppliers, for the need for implementation. So it's something that we take quite seriously. In terms of impacts on the sector, I don't know. I don't think we've seen the shakeout yet, but obviously, if you have a significant amount of polysilicon that all of a sudden becomes unavailable because of ethical reasons, that could have price supply impact, across the consumers that depend upon that. So Europe, US, Latin America. So hopefully, the focus that the U.S. government and I guess the EU now are now putting on this, if there are problems, there'll start to be a correction at source, and then with traceability protocols, the consumers can have a degree of comfort, if you will, that they're properly and ethically supplying their projects. But supply and price impacts are not clear at the moment.
Okay. No, thank you for that insight. I mean, it's a real, certainly an issue that we're talking about a lot, and something that, you know, as it continues to evolve, I think we'll understand better. But it's excellent. It's really, you know, great to hear, frankly, how Atlas is taking it so seriously, and you know, all of our, I think our partners, our client partners, really take this very seriously. So, thanks for that insight.
I would, Elizabeth, if
Yeah,
I may.
please.
I think the consternation on our side would be that there's very few alternatives, right? So
Yeah.
there is, and I won't even profess to be near to understanding the full, you know, political or economic rationale over the last 20 years of the development of the sector. You know, it's probably one-sided, if you will, to, you know, buying from a particular location in the world. But the unfortunate circumstance is, you know, we are a company that has significant portion of our equity funding comes from U.S. pensioners, right? You know, whether they're firefighters in New York or teachers in Texas, you know, or otherwise. But we don't have access, if you will, to available product out of the United States. If you look at First Solar as an example, on their existing capacity, I think they're sold out fully through 2023. You know, Andy probably knows better because he's operating, you know, up there. But, you know, every project that we've looked at, you know, we take a look, but it's the ability to bring First Solar modules, which is really the only supplier out of the U.S. into our Latin American projects, has never materialized. So if there were to be a potential additional positive outcome of this, it would be, you know, if the current government in the United States is actually focused on a very, very expensive infrastructure plan, that hopefully they will be dedicating amounts of that plan, if you will, to increase the cost efficiency for additional supply coming out of markets, let's say, US as an example, where we can have a higher degree of comfort, if you will, on material supply, labor conditions, and contractual framework on sale. So I'll leave that as my political statement.
Do you want to say anything, Andy, or you want to stay out of it?
I'd rather stay out of it. to focus attention on Haiti and try to bring some investment down to Haiti. Maybe there is another crazy individual down in the audience that will. I will say this, Michael. It is. Having a solid supply chain in the United States has been one of our strongest pain points. It is incredibly difficult to get constant supply you can count on. For anybody that's out there that's in the solar market in the United States, they know it's like a Wild West. Whatever supply contracts you put together, the day something happens, tariffs come in, everything is out the window. You cannot count on anything. And when our dear friends at IDB Invest want us to put the financial model as how much is your cost per watt gonna be for a polysilicon 450 2 years from now when we start construction, I'm like, I had to redesign 1,000 systems 2 months ago because the boat just turned and went the other direction to another contractor that paid more.
Yeah.
That is the reality. And sometimes we're trying to force the reality in these theoretical models with lack of flexibility. When I say we, I mean us as an industry. And the reality is different. The reality is that you get a phone call and you're expecting panels to get delivered in the port of whatever in 2 months, and you're expecting 15 containers, and the supplier just tells you you're not getting them anymore.
Andy, let me jump in there. I'm sure folks have other forms of nightmares or dreams, but that is at the top of my mind. And I would say that, Elizabeth, you made a comment, prices keep dropping. Well, prices have gone from 19 cents to 28 to 30 cents over the last 8 months.
Drop.
So
yeah.
that's an inverted drop.
Yeah.
And so what I would say is, where once you could look at developers who wanted to become, take finance and build projects, and I, as a bank, I trust you could probably give them a benefit of a doubt, right? The cost will come in, right? Now I trust it's really quite critical as a lender, and this that your counterparties, if you will, on the sponsor side, are extremely robust in their ability to bring equity capital to the table, because there's certain risk that lenders simply can't take. Once a project model is closed and the viability is printed, as Andy says, when you get that phone call in the middle of the night saying that you're not getting supply unless you do the following, and that following has a cost implication, unfortunately that falls to equity, and that's prevalent in the markets today. So
Yeah.
And if I may add, and if that hit must be taken by equity, and you're operating, I mean, look, the energy business, let's face it, we're technology-based and textile returns. Okay, so with that in mind, when you have to call your equity and tell them, hey, you have to take a hit of this many points, okay, it's done, it's out, it's over. There's no way to fix that. How are you going to bridge that gap at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Selling Sapporo beer.
Yeah.
Well, let me shift to Bernardita, because this is a fascinating discussion. No, and it's something, and I apologize for not knowing where solar panels are. I've been, knee deep in ports lately, but the interesting, I think it's really interesting discussion, and maybe, there's some U.S. policymakers out there who are hearing this and thinking, okay, we have to help suppliers if we're going to cut off all supply from China. The other thing that I see as sort of this, I don't know if you call it a dilemma, it's like an identity crisis or something in a lot of the countries. And I've been working mostly in Latin America, or I mean, in the Caribbean lately, Bernardita. I don't know what's going on in Chile exactly, but there seems to be this like, should we go all in on gas or should we go all in on renewables? Like this kind of dilemma, or in terms of policy, in terms of setting goals, in terms of, and so, I mean, what are your thoughts? You had specified of converting some, coal plants to natural gas, as well as building this massive amount of renewables. How do you make those decisions? What are the incentives that have to be there to push toward renewables versus gas?
Well, sorry if I refer specifically to Chile, which is probably not the case of most other countries in the Latin American and Caribbean region. In Chile, for example, oil and gas have never been cheap and easy. Even coal has never been easy. We have to import all of these materials. So although at sometimes, for example, coal has been cheap, but right now coal prices have gone up significantly. So the case of renewables for us is just there. I mean, they are now the cheapest and easiest source, now that technology has lowered the investment cost of solar and wind generation. Now, I completely agree, and I'm sympathetic with what Michael and Andy were saying about the suppliers, the difficulty in getting the supplies today. And we've also suffered the call at midnight saying, you know what, I won't meet my contract because somebody else pays me more somewhere else for the panels or whatever the material is. And so today specifically, it's getting more difficult. But in general, the cost of operating a renewable plant is obviously much, much lower than a coal-fired plant that needs a lot of maintenance, that you need the fuel, etc. But the renewables are right there, and they are cleaner. So the main problem that need to be tackled are the intermittency of renewables, Okay, we need supply 24/7, and we have a lot of sun and wind during the day, and at night, what do? You still have to supply your customers, the mining companies, the whatever, all the industrial companies that operate 24/7. Okay, bakeries or whatever. So the intermittency is one. A second problem is the need to strengthen and extend transmission networks, because not always the resource of the renewables is where demand is. And also the changing or uncertain regulatory frameworks. That is very complex, because we're all facing a very, very complex situation in terms of building the renewables, getting the supplies, etc. And then the frameworks change, or they are uncertain for the future. Okay, and the other thing is also the stricter social and environmental requirements, which are so necessary and understandable, and we need to abide by all these guidelines, but are also costlier. So that is a point where, for example, like institutions like the IDB can really try to help their clients. Okay, and then in terms of natural gas, if there is a country with oversupply, lucky them, but it's not our case. And it is the fuel that can definitely help the transition by backing up the renewables when they are not available. So natural gas will have a role, probably a very important role in the years to come, until we find, the perfect solutions for the intermittency of renewables.
Yeah, yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I think we have to cut off our session. I have other questions that I wanted to ask. I wish we had another 20 minutes. I really do. It's really great and fascinating to talk to all of you this morning. And I thank you so much for your participation. It's a very complex, obviously, future that we're looking at right now. There's a lot of potential for technological innovation. There are challenges from a policy perspective. There are risks that we're facing that we haven't faced before. And so our goal as a multilateral development bank, and with our public sector and our private sector sides of the bank, is to try to work with you to overcome those barriers and make these projects happen. And so we really welcome the continued dialogue, and and thank you all for being part of this session this morning. And we'll turn it back over to our moderator, to our master of ceremonies, so we can get the guidance on the next steps.
Hi, Elizabeth. If you
Yes.
like, you have a little bit more time.
Oh, I do. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
if you want to. We have like 9 minutes if you want.
Oh, my sorry. I thought I only had till 9:20. That's what I was told. Okay. Great. No, thank you. Well,
Elizabeth,
I guess that, yeah. Please.
I apologize. There's a topic maybe I'll throw out there. I think you had touched on it, and I think it's important. Maybe we could talk for a couple minutes, if you will, about how each of us are supporting diversity and creating opportunities that aren't, if you will, return on equity, but they're return on people, if you will.
Please.
So I think it's important, and I'd like to compliment IDB, as Gianfranco mentioned during his introduction. Atlas Renewable Energies has actually been a beneficiary financially through certain subsidized partner money, if you will, that IDB Direct has been able to bring to the table. But it's less of an incentive, if you will, and it's more of a reward for programs that are core. And one of the programs that I'd like to focus on is we have a program that's called We Are All Part of the Same Energy. And there we're focused on creating opportunities for women and minorities in the communities around our project, all of our projects. We actually have a requirement that all of our EPC contractors have training programs for women and persons of minority backgrounds in the communities where the projects are being built. We have an express target today of at least 15% of all of our construction workforce and ongoing O&M being women occupied spots, apart, if you will, from diversification from people of different backgrounds. We've trained over the last 2 years over 900 women for construction opportunities and ongoing operation and maintenance opportunities at our project sites. And the last 3 projects that we have up and running with our program, I'm very glad to say that we've achieved an average of around 16% of women participating in the workforce. So that's something that we take as a top priority objective, and it's something that we actually consider when we're costing and looking at the viability of a project. We include these programs. So if project's not viable with the inclusion of these programs, we will look at other opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and touch on the same thing, if I may, Elizabeth. So look, at the end of the day, you talked earlier about opportunity. People want opportunity. If the next Marie Curie can come from a small village in Haiti Northwest, but without access to energy and information, she most definitely will not. This is what we're bringing to the table. We're bringing the splendor of life, opportunity for a better future, and very importantly, jobs. People are looking for a job to proudly earn their keep, to provide for their families, whether they're women or men technicians, whether they're office workers, whether they're linemen, whether they're whatever they are, they're looking to provide for their families, give an opportunity. I think the most important thing, and I applaud IDB Invest, because Liz, we've been in this project with IDB for 4 years. We've basically written the book on how to finance a distribution project. It was extremely painful, and I applaud you guys for the patience and the resources you guys put into. But the reality is we need a whole lot more to take this opportunity, to take the splendor of life to a whole country like Haiti. Thank you.
No, thanks, Andy. And we've obviously seen in your project how you have so many women working for you and so many training opportunities.
With me.
With you. Exactly. And keeping you in line, frankly, from what I've seen. You also do some bringing of people to the U.S., right, to be trained with the Segura platform in the U.S., and provide that kind of training as well, technical training to men and women in Haiti who are looking to do those more technical skills as well, right?
Absolutely, and it's an enormous part, because look, I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus, but like the literacy levels are low. We have to start at the very bottom. We have to start with the first day of training is like, okay, boys and girls, everybody has to wear shoes at work if you want to be a lineman, linewoman. So, and you have to dedicate real resources. If you cannot dedicate resources, if the debt, the equity, the money is not there to dedicate these resources for these training programs, to bring people in from the communities you are serving as a utility, that you have 25,000 headaches that will come to your office when they have a problem. This is not like we're hidden behind the PPA with a utility company as an IPP. Each one of your people that you're serving is a potential problem that will show up at your office. We've done things like, hey, keep the office open 24/7. If people have a problem, management training. We are starting at zero, but we have a tremendous team out there for the past 5 years that have been together with us, men and women that have dedicated their lives, money out of their pocket to make sure that this project survives.
Okay, so just to kind of tie things up, and this is fantastic. It just kind of touches on all of the different aspects of sustainability and the different components of it, and how you all you have to focus on communities and technologies and sourcing equipment and all these different things. What about the future? I mean, what do you see? Chile is usually, Bernardita, where from the bank's perspective, we've seen many things happening for the first time, in the region at least. We did a geothermal project there recently. The question I have is, are you looking at new technologies? I've heard of some hydrogen projects being developed in Chile. Is that something that NG is interested in? Obviously, if you want to talk about the issue of the gender diversity as well, please do, because I'm sure you're doing a lot. But I want to kind of look a little bit toward the future and get kind of your perspective of where these new technologies are, how closely you're following them, how you're investing in them. What do you see happening?
Yeah, well, of course, as I said earlier, the main problem of renewables is their intermittent supply pattern today. So, and this should be resolved with technological progress, including the development of alternatives such as batteries and green hydrogen. NG is completely involved in the green hydrogen development. So that is a subject I'm not specialized in. I don't know exactly what the point is. I mean, at which stage NG is today, but really they are developing lots of opportunities there, pilot projects, etc. Yeah, and of course also about gender diversity and all of that and inclusion. This month in NG we're focused on the on all the inclusion month. So this is something we take very seriously. This has been an industry in general very much inclined to employ men and very few women, but that is changing rapidly. And we have some goals in that sense. We also work a lot with the communities. For example, in the Calama wind farm that we were talking about, that is being financed by this loan that Gianfranco said about this pilot financing, and very unique. Around the Calama wind farm, they are indigenous communities, and even though they are far away from the wind farm is in the middle of the desert, but we have been doing lots of work with those communities that are sort of isolated. But for example, I don't know, there's a small town there where the main activity in the year is a religious festivity, for example, and we're working with them in putting solar panels and so that they have solar power to celebrate their festivity instead of having these diesel engines, for example. I mean, those are kinds of very small examples that you can find there.
But they make a difference. They make a difference.
Exactly.
Yeah, they really do. Thank you so much, Bernardita. It's really fantastic to hear the leadership that NG is having in this sector, and we're so pleased to be a partner with you. Thanks again to all of the panelists. I do think now we really are out of time. It's been a pleasure to be part of the panel, and we turn it over to our Master of Ceremonies, and please, we welcome to continued conversation and continued collaboration with all of you. Thank you so much.